Okay, Rick, here we go. So we're going to fire up DaVinci Resolve. And while this is loading, at this point, you would have needed to have downloaded this tool onto your system. And once the tool is on your system, then you can just follow these directions here. Okay, so here we are in DaVinci Resolve. And I've already got a little background graphic loaded up on the timeline. I've just got to run it out to the right length. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to come over here, and this is the tool you're looking for, FD Magic Text Panels. So we're just going to double click that, and it's going to ask you if you want to install it. So you just go install. Once that's done, then we're going to go over here to titles, and we're going to open that up. We're going to go to Fuzzee D. Now you won't see all this, you'll just see the magic panels unless you have other of my tools. And we're just going to drag this into the timeline. Okay, now you'll notice that it's a little longer than it needs to be, and that's just for future use. So you can move it past where the text completely disappears. Move it just a little further, and then you can shrink this down. Okay. So we'll just go back to the beginning. We'll let it play through real quick, and then I'll show you how to make all the adjustments. It'll get a little smoother this next time. Okay, now you notice vertically it's a little off center, and that's because I've got an adjustment in here for when you're using an odd number. So just for now, I'm going to turn this checkbox off. So I put the controls that you're going to be using the most often up at the top. So here's all of your controls, and they're laid out simple. I mean, there's a lot there, but it's all simple and straightforward. Most of them, once you have it set up the first time, you're not going to have to mess around. So before you try and set anything, what you want to do is move your playhead to just where the first background panel is visible there. And then we'll adjust that in a minute. So we can come in here and you can type in whatever you want. And it immediately reflects on screen. So I won't bother changing the rest of these. I'll just, you can see that they're working, they're centered. So here you can change your text color. So you can either pop up a little window like that and pick a color, or you can just use the sliders here and adjust it live like that. So now we've got our letter spacing or tracking. So if you want to increase the spacing in your letters, you can do that. If you want to move it a little slower, go into the actual text box and then drag, and it moves a little more gentle. So if you're having something that won't fit, you can mess with this a little bit. Now you see this little dot that appears. Well, once you've moved it, that's kind of your default center point. So if we click on that, that'll reset it back to the starting point. So I'm not sure why that text size wasn't working earlier before I picked a different font. Not sure why that is. I know you're in a hurry to get this tool and start using it. So if if you go to change the text size and it won't change, just come down and change the font. Now the reason the font is at the very bottom is because once you've got one that you like, you're probably never going to change it again. Now sometimes when you change fonts, it's going to change the alignment vertically and horizontally sometimes. Some different fonts that do things a little funky. So I put in an adjustment. So if you need to do a little nudging, you can nudge it left or right. it's not centering quite right. And we've also got the same for vertical. Sorry, my system is being a little bit, yeah, there you can see it's moving now. I've got so much stuff open right now, my system is being a little wonky. So once you've got your text all laid out the way you want it, the next section we've got down here is our the little highlight panels behind the text. I put that first over the rear panels because this is probably what you're going to be changing more often if you do decide you want to change it. So you can adjust the corner radius, and when you adjust this corner radius here, it adjusts it for all of them at once. So you'll see as we move this, you see the ends curve. You can go totally square if you want them so, and then we can default back to our starting point. Once again, you can change your colors with the sliders, or you can use the dialog box. Now I added a little extra on here. I know you didn't ask for this, but I thought it would be a nice to have, and it was so little extra work to add this in here that it was just worth the squeeze for me to do it. So here, if we want to change the stroke color, you can see that changes it there. And once again, of course, we're working with our, what I call the highlight panels. And you can also adjust your stroke width. Now, I didn't give you a lot of adjustment because past a certain point, it's not really feasible. So I defaulted it nice and thin, but if you want to make them a little thicker, you can do that here. If you don't want any outlines at all, just take it to 0. So that way, if you don't like them, you don't have to have them. Now here you can adjust the opacity. So if you want to make it a little more solid, you can do that. If you want to make it a little bit see-through, you can do that as well. I'll actually crank these up full blast here. So now I've got some checkboxes. I tried to do this another way. This is kind of what delayed me. I was trying to have it detect if there was any text in the text box, and if not, to not display it. Unfortunately, the code, I just couldn't get that to work, so I had to use these checkboxes instead. So the way I did this is it'll turn off both the text and the little backer highlight at the same time. So if I do that, then I can get rid of these other ones, but it leaves the text intact as far as what you typed in. So if it's stuff that you reuse all the time, then you don't have to wipe it out. Now, if you've got an odd number, if you've got a single one, you use the second one from the top and then you click the odd number adjustment, and that centers it vertically. And then if you want to use 3, then you would use the top 3. And then if you're going to use an even number, then you would turn off that odd adjustment. So you might want to do it that way if you want them more closely centered. So this gives you quite a degree of flexibility. So if I back this up to the beginning, you'll see everything else still works as normal. It just does that adjustment to the positioning based on whether you've got that odd number adjustment set up or not. Okay, so let's go down a little further. Actually, I'll turn these all back on here. Now we've also got corner radius adjustment for these rear panels. And once again, they're at the bottom because they don't need to be changed very often, I wouldn't think. So we can change that corner radius. So that gives you some flexibility there. Once again, you can change the opacity. Now this changes the opacity for both panels. Okay, it changes it all at the same time. So this just makes for a lot less controls that you have to worry about. Now, if you want to, you can, oh, I had originally intended for you to be able to change the panel size, but once I started putting the animation in, I have to use masks. So if you change the size, it kind of messes that up. So for now, you can change the size of the entire thing, but we'll get to that in a second. At a later point, I may see if I can fix this if you think it's something that you really need, but probably not, because you can change the overall size of the whole thing very easily. But we'll cover that in a second. So here's our main panel color. So we can change that again with these sliders, or you can bring up the dialog, completely up to you. Now I didn't set up defaults for these. I suppose I could have, but didn't really think it would be that important. And then right below your main panel color, you'll see the stroke color. So you can change that stroke color. Once again, we've got our stroke width here, and this adjusts it for both panels. So if you don't want a stroke, you can just get rid of it. If you do, you can adjust. I forgot to limit that so that you couldn't go beyond a certain amount. Sorry about that. If you weren't so pressed for time, I'd fix that before I deliver it, but I know you need this right away. So if it's something you want me to fix, let me know and I'll fix that little thing. Easy enough to do. It'll just take a little time. The way I designed this, I can make changes to just about anything, you know, minor tweaks like that. I can do that pretty quickly. It's very modular designed. So yeah, you can change your stroke color there, and then you can change your second panel. But before you do that, you want to move your playhead until that second panel shows up. And once again, you can change the main panel color and your stroke. And then at the very bottom here, we've got your font, so you can choose different fonts. If you're going to change the styling, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the font. I don't know if this is, I'm pretty sure it's not an issue with my code. I think it's just an issue with either Windows or with DaVinci. I know some of the fonts kind of freak it out, but I've had a little bit more issues with this since I've got probably 2,000 fonts installed on my system, because I do a lot of desktop publishing stuff and design work. So now right at the very bottom, I included some contact information. So if you need to get a hold of me directly, you can do that. You don't have to go through the Fiverr. So you can contact me for tech support. Or you can do it through Fiverr, whatever you feel comfortable with. It doesn't really matter to me. Okay, that's pretty much it. It's pretty easy to use. So just in case you're interested, because I know you're trying to learn this stuff for yourself. So the rest of this, I'm just going to take you in for a little tour. Oh, I gotta switch timelines here. Okay, so let me show you the code structure here real quick. So it looks fairly simple, but some of these are groups. So if I open this up, you can see this is quite a large group. Let me make some room here. So you can see that it's a little more complicated than it looks. There's quite a bit of stuff in there. And then the same goes for, let me see, we've got a group here. That's our text controls. And then we've got our panels. So we're using basically backgrounds and masks to create shapes. So when you're adjusting the color, you're actually adjusting the color of the background, and the shape is determined by the mask. So if you want to move it or change its opacity or whatever. That's actually done at the level of the mask that you've attached to it. So if I open this up, so you can see I've got, you got the main panel and then the mask that gives it its shape. And then over here is another background, and then this mask gives it its outline, and there's actually just a little checkbox. So if I open this up over here and we go to settings, oh right, yeah, it's right here underneath border width. So if you click on solid, it makes it solid, but if that's not checked, then you get an outline, and then your border width affects that outline. So what I call the stroke is the border. So now you notice that it actually appears to look the same size between the two, even though this one we're at 1080p and the other one was 1440p. So it compensates for that automatically. Now, when I told you you could increase the size, you can also increase the position of where, oh, wrong one. So up here you've got title and settings. So if we click on settings over here, we've got a whole new set of controls. Now these are independent of my programming. This comes in DaVinci itself. So if you want this a bit bigger, you can actually just zoom it, make it whatever size you want. And if you wanted to shift the position it's at, you can do that as well. You can even set up a rotation. So by the way, if you double click on any one of these main labels, it sets it back to defaults. Well, Rick, I hope you love this. If you have any issues, please make sure contact me and let me know. And we will talk to you later. Enjoy the package.